Hello, I'm the Angry Spork, taking issue with Batman vs. Predator 3. The Dark Knight uses a big laser pointer to attract the predators to his abandoned Wayne Tower, because I guess deep down, all Preds are just like cats. He only manages to reel in one of his targets, as the other one has gone to track down Robin, who's on a double date at the drive-in, and is totally unaware of the existence of the alien hunters. Yet another great example of Batman keeping people in the dark. The final issue's cover is pretty striking. A predator apparently in the Batcave, standing on the giant penny while holding a large portion of the batsuit with the symbol on it. It's definitely a cool, interesting visual, if nothing else. We pick up with Batman in his previous precarious position, mentioning out loud that the other predator is going after Robin, overheard through comms by Alfred, who's already returned to the Batcave. The butler thinks his boss was talking to him, and gets told to shut up because he's busy. Yeah, whether or not he's fighting an alien warrior right now, it's not difficult to see why Alfred quit a couple of times, is it? Bats hits his foe with some of the coolant from his suit, noticing it doesn't seem to much care for low temperatures. They both fall over the edge, and I think Bats is trying for a kick to the crotch on their way down.
Next two words out of your mouth aren't "see it," then the third word will be, "Oh my God, my crotch, you've punched me in the crotch."
He catches a decorative vine, while his opponent doesn't. Whether those plants are real or fake, it's a good thing he ordered the kind that can support a full-grown muscular man in high-tech body armor. He informs Alfred that Robin is in danger from the other visitor, and needs to be warned. Not sure why the shading has this predator colored all green. Oh no, there really was a virus in the Wayne Tower vents. He's caught something, and now Bruce is liable for a lawsuit for not actually fumigating last issue. Something I find particularly weird, the captioned dialogue from Bruce is repeated on the next page. I'm guessing it has something to do with that, despite the number of panels, barely any time is progressing between them, but it still seems odd. Anyway, while he avoids an energy blast, Tim is getting into the swing of enjoying the predictable dialogue of the movies they're watching, implying they've seen more than one before the current feature, which also kind of makes me scratch my head. Even movies from the 50s could go from an hour and a half to 2 hours, so even if this started at like 7, they've got to be pushing midnight by now. But I guess these kids don't have a curfew, despite being 15, 16 at the oldest. Alfred calls Drake's car phone, telling him he's in great danger, and he asks if this is a joke. Oh yes, it's one of those patented Pennyworth pranks he's so well known for. Okay, there's that episode of TAS set on April Fool's Day, but he kept it in the mansion. That's called professionalism. Keeping vague about the space hunters, Alfred explains that the killers who have been active the past few weeks are likely after him, not concerned with his dual identities, and there's nothing more that can be said to convince him further that those around him are at risk. Fortunately, Drake sees some convincing evidence in the form of a splash page featuring the cloaked predator's shimmer against the movie screen. Cool design of that monster, by the way, genuinely creepy from something that's supposed to be cheap and cheesy looking. Free of mercy and human compassion, this creature lives only to kill! Oh, I see Tucker Carlson has some competition. Tim throws his friends out of his car, rather loudly, before driving off, at which point we go to Batman dodging yet another energy blast. Though I wonder if it's supposed to be the same energy blast from a few pages ago to illustrate different locations' events happening simultaneously. Or maybe I'm overthinking it because of that dialogue thing I mentioned a minute ago. Anyway, we go back to Tim, urged by Alfred to return to the cave, and hopefully he'll get the opportunity to explain in detail about the creatures, as the sidekick avoids an explosion. Had plenty of opportunity in the first 3 issues. Just saying.
Shouldn't we be learning something?
The Wayne Tower predator climbs up a level to retrieve his helmet, as Tim arrives at the cave, and I guess he's suited up whenever he hit a red light. Pennyworth says he's not at liberty to elaborate on the creature, because Bruce doesn't want him exposed to the problem more than necessary. Tim, understandably upset, points out the problem nearly killed him and his friends, when proximity alarms are set off by an intruder. It's either the predator or a very determined Girl Scout selling cookies. Batman, meanwhile, is bleeding and possibly out of coolant for his suit, as his foe watches him on security cameras. Looks like Bruce could use some backup. I bet now he wishes he had, hired Paul Blart as head of security. Tim discovers how the hunter followed him, a transmitter placed underneath the Redbird, his personal car, which can also change appearance for civilian driving. Because comic books. He wants as many details on the threat as Alfred can give, and he says the intruder heading towards them is from another planet. Despite motion detectors tracking its arrival, Tim doesn't see anything, or those 3 laser dots on his face. Alfred narrowly pushes him out of the way of an energy blast, which instead hits the leg of the iconic dinosaur trophy, causing it to fall over.
"Don't bother getting it insured," I said. "What's going to happen to a mechanical T-Rex kept in an underground cave?" I said.
Hiding among the other trophies, Alfred pokes out to use his mighty boomstick, hitting the invader in the chest, but he knows this will be but a momentary stopgap, and suggests they find cover, while in Wayne Tower, the other Pred follows a trail of blood as Batman is treating his wound. As they trek to the best spot in the cave to make their stand, Robin asks where Pennyworth got his weapon. Turns out it's an old family heirloom, and isn't concerned about Master Wayne's dislike of guns, because a space invader is here and he's not. "I just hope I live to hear you two debate the subject."
Hello, welcome to Bat Time with Batman. My guest tonight is Bruce Wayne's butler, and not mine, Alfred Pennyworth. The subject is, should guns be allowed in the Batcave for any reason?
Thank you for having me on, sir.
Glad to have you. Now, on the subject of whether or not guns should ever be used in the Batcave. Rabble, rabble.
Rabble, rabble, rabble.
Rabble, 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 rabble. Rabble, 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 rabble.
Rabble,
Rabble, rabble, rabble, rabble.
rabble, rabble. Eschewing Earth etiquette, Predator 1 doesn't knock on the men's room door, he merely opens it and fires. Bats dodges and dives through the hole, and look out, the Pred is right there! Oh wait, it's just the next panel. Had me going there for a minute. In the cave, Predator 2 has caught up to his target, and Robin takes Alfred's gun. Not to kill, but to call for reinforcements when he squeezes the trigger. Startled bats swarm around, disorienting the hunter and knocking him down while his prey vamoose. In Wayne Tower's laundry room, Batman has a surprise for his stalker.
Eat downy softness, sucker!
He borrowed Mr. Freeze's Ab-Zero gun from Police Impound and fires, having learned their secret of not liking cold. Seems like another leap for the detective. The Preds didn't look any less efficient when killing Vic's goons in that freezer. At most you can glean that their helmet's sensors don't detect cold very well, but to say he learned that from Freeze feels like quite the stretch. Robin and Alfred cross a higher-level bridge in the cave, so even if he's invisible, they'll know what path the alien takes, giving them some advantage. Unfortunately, the bridge is blasted and the butler drops his boomstick, as the Predator approaches them from the way they came. Tim hands Alfred a batarang to use as best he can. "In the words of Wellington, I want a beef dish named after me. If we're to die, then die hard." And in the words of moviegoers, if you're going to die hard, then stop after 4 because the writing really doesn't get any better. The enemy approaches, drawing the 6-shooter it was given a couple issues back. As Batman races through the subway with Pred 1 tied to his hood, which is kind of awesome, Alfred takes a hit as Robin confronts his hunter up close. When he said his career needed a shot in the arm, this is not what he meant! Tim knocks the gun away, gets his staff busted, and seems outmatched by the creature, especially when he's hanging him over the ledge by the foot.
Free of mercy and compassion, this creature lives only to kill.
Aw man, I'm gonna die in a drive-in movie. Look on the bright side, you'll probably get the Riptrax treatment, so it's not a total loss. Batman interrupts them, showing the medallion Pred 1 had, acting as a clear sign that the hunt is over. As Tim is released, Bats tells the visitor to take his father and leave the planet. As Kid Predator collects his pappy, Bruce explains that the hunters viewed the dynamic duo much like themselves, father and son, and figured they were not only the best kind of trophies, but Robin was intended to be the younger's first solo kill. However, the vigilantes proved a bigger challenge than expected, and the Predators were humiliated. The comic ends with the son having carried his father to their spaceship and taking off, with Batman hoping this is the final time they trouble Earth again. That was Batman vs. Predator 3, and it's a pretty good comic. Nice dialogue, good action, some decent foreshadowing, but it does leave some threads hanging and some matters unresolved. As in previous crossovers, Batman arrives at several conclusions about the Hunters, with very little of it seeming to be substantiated in the story. Maybe it's established in the Predator comics or movies that they prefer hot environments. That explains why they've arrived during Gotham heat waves. but there was nothing about how they killed Freeze's men to clue Batman off that they had a particular vulnerability to cold. Heck, if he had recalled previous encounters also involved heat waves in the city, that would have made for a better deduction. In short, many story and plot elements absolutely make sense, but how Batman arrives at the conclusions related to them is kind of questionable.
I'm Batman.
The most he got was that the guy with sub-zero body temperature was basically invisible to them. Victor didn't even mention the attackers weren't human, and I'm not sure what it benefited him to keep that information to himself, unless he just really wanted Batman dead in general, which, possible. And as I've repeated, it didn't benefit anyone that Bruce kept so much of this from his sidekick. Starting out, you could argue that he wanted to be more sure of who was behind the garish killings. That's fine, don't want to chase any red herrings. But when things start adding up and Tim knew something was bothering him, what sense did it make to keep him in the dark for so long? Not wanting him to be too obvious a target, I get, but there's a point where Drake's lack of knowledge, and thus lack of preparedness, puts him in the most danger. And I gotta wonder how he explained to his friends and girlfriend why he yelled them out of his car and drove off. There were options that a guy as smart as Batman could have chosen that would have helped Robin let him know at least some of what was going on, but still withholding some information because of a misguided sense of protection. Bruce is never taken to task for this. This only strains his working relationship with Tim further and needlessly endangers him and those around him. The two have had their problems, but we, the reader, get little more than a brief excuse as to why Tim shouldn't know about the killer space poachers. Them being ideal trophies because of their father-son or mentor-mentee relationship, the whole rite of passage thing, was an interesting reason to retread this crossover concept. Batman realizing what it was still feels like a stretch of his detective skills, but mildly less so than other things he managed to figure out. And the flashbacks actually got me wondering, were those both the Predator Dad? The Predator, if you will? Was it him both times, or was at least one of those flashbacks his father? Usually in sci-fi, non-human life forms have much longer lifespans by comparison. I could guess that it was Grandpappy Pred who killed the conquistadors, then handed the medallion down to his son, who then killed some cowboys and took a pistol that we saw handed down to his son. Maybe I'm off base here, but that's what I gleaned since they didn't have any dialogue. Though when the story does go without speech or narration, it still flows very well. The art is good, a nice balance of lights and darks, though some shadowed color choices seemed a bit odd at the time, and sometimes characters had patches of light that looked more like paper glued to their faces. I also thought that maybe Bruce was looking at Bane's mask because it was a mild hint to another powerful opponent, but maybe that's just because Bane was co-created by this story's writer, Chuck Dixon. I mean, this is the third time Bats has faced these visitors, and they were nothing like the muscle-bound luchador. It's an entertaining 4 issues and had its share of cleverness, as well as being from a more enjoyable era of comics, but it lacked a bit of polish in several respects, some questions unanswered, and a few too many leaps taken that kept it from being more solid in my opinion. But it's not like I haven't reviewed worse. I'm the Angry Spork, and man have I got issues.